What if you could focus like a Roman emperor, while the world crumbles around you? Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during wars and plagues, yet his mind remained razor sharp. Today, we reveal the ancient Stoic secrets to kill distraction and master your attention. Journaling is the Stoics' daily forge, the quiet workshop where raw experience is hammered into purposeful action. Picture Marcus Aurelius rising before dawn in his military tent on the northern frontier. Outside, frost and fear mingle. Inside, a single oil lamp burns while the emperor bends over wax tablets. He is not composing edicts for senators or correspondence for generals. He writes to himself. Every line is a conversation with his own mind, a reminder of duty, a confession of weakness, a rehearsal for the day's moral tests. This private dialogue is the reason his public decisions seem calm and deliberate amid chaos. By recording thoughts without ornament, he separates signal from noise, emotion from judgment, and emerges with a sharper sense of what truly matters. The power of journaling lies first in its immediacy. Thoughts, like startled birds, scatter quickly. Once pinned to the page, they become specimens we can observe. Marcus called this practice clearing the mind's courtyard. Modern neuroscience echoes him. Writing activates the brain's prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive control, pulling us out of limbic reactivity. When you describe yesterday's distractions, doom scrolling, pointless arguments, half-hearted multitasking, you turn vague guilt into concrete evidence. The page is objective, it neither flatters nor condemns. You can't edit reality until you see it, and journaling makes the invisible visible. Yet Stoic journaling is more than a diary of events, it is a rehearsal of values. Before Marcus confronted barbarian warlords, he confronted his own motives. He asked, "What virtue is required of me today? Justice, courage, temperance, wisdom." By articulating desired traits ahead of time, he primed his attention. Modern behavioral psychology explains why this works: implementation intentions. If situation X occurs, I will perform action Y. Significantly boost follow-through. Writing, when colleagues gossip, I will remain silent. Or, if my phone pings during study, I will breathe and return to the page. Transforms a vague wish into a programmed reflex. The journal is thus a training ground where future distractions are pre-diffused. Another Stoic dimension is negative visualization. Marcus often imagined worst-case scenarios: betrayal, illness, death. Far from morbid, this exercise inoculated him against panic. On paper, he met adversity before it arrived, rehearsing acceptance. When disruptions actually appeared, they felt familiar, even smaller than pictured. You can adapt this today, right? Suppose the meeting overruns, the Wi-Fi dies, and my plans crumble. What remains within my control? The practice shifts focus from external turbulence to internal response. The only realm Stoics deem ours to steer. A crucial element is brutal honesty. Marcus scolded himself for vanity, laziness, irritability, yet always returned to gentle encouragement. The page becomes both tribunal and therapist. This duality prevents two common traps: self-delusion and self-flagellation. In a journal, you expose excuses. I didn't have time often means I feared discomfort. But you also discover patterns of perseverance worth celebrating. Over weeks, entries reveal progress: fewer impulsive email checks, deeper work sessions, calmer evenings. Progress measured breeds momentum. You realize you are not sculpting an entirely new statue every morning, you are refining yesterday's marble. Stoic journaling is deliberately low friction. Marcus used tablets and a stylus. You might choose a battered notebook or a plain text file. The medium matters less than consistency. Aim for a daily rendezvous, preferably at 2 pivot points: dawn forecast and dusk review. In the morning, set intention: what principle guides the day? What distractions are likely? How will you respond? In the evening, audit performance. Where did you uphold virtue? Where did you slip? End with a brief plan to adjust. This cyclical structure mirrors military after-action reports, turning life into a series of experiments whose data accumulate toward mastery. Some worry that journaling steals time from action. Marcus would counter that: unfocused action wastes more. 10 deliberate minutes writing may recover hours otherwise lost to aimless browsing. Moreover, journals create an external memory. By parking concerns on paper, you free cognitive bandwidth for present tasks. Cognitive load theory confirms this: offloading information reduces working memory strain, allowing deeper reasoning. In practical terms, jotting tomorrow's to-dos tonight can quiet midnight rumination, leading to better sleep and sharper focus the next day. Resistance often surfaces as perfectionism, wanting eloquent sentences or a leather-bound volume. Stoics laugh at such vanity. The virtue lies in content, not calligraphy. Scribble shorthand, bullet points, fragments. Marcus never intended his meditations for publication. Their rawness is their charm. Treat the journal as a workshop floor, not a museum gallery. If a page is messy, great. It means you wrestled with truth. Finally, remember that journaling is not an end but a compass. The objective is lived focus, the ability to inhabit each task fully, unperturbed by the surrounding carnival of distractions. Close the notebook and step into your day, like a Roman commander entering the forum, already clear on mission and immune to trivial chatter. When temptations whisper, news feeds, gossip, shiny side quests, recall your morning entry. Let the inked words form a shield. Is this essential? If not, march on. Practice this for 30 mornings and evenings, and patterns will crystallize. After 90, your journal becomes a personal philosophy manual, unique yet echoing Stoic wisdom across millennia. You will notice quieter self-talk, faster recovery from interruptions, a growing sense that time is yours to deploy, not drift through. Marcus ruled an empire, you rule the empire of your attention. Journaling is your daily audience with the emperor within, where distractions are tried and sentenced, and focus is crowned anew. Memento mori, remember you will die, is one of the most sobering and empowering principles in Stoic philosophy. At first glance, it may seem morbid, even depressing, but for the Stoics, it was not about despair, it was about sharpening focus. To truly grasp the weight of memento mori is to understand how fleeting and fragile life is, and how that very fragility gives urgency and meaning to each moment. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, reminded himself daily that he could die at any moment, not out of fear, but to remove distractions and align himself with what truly mattered. When you live with death in mind, trivial things lose their grip on you. The petty arguments, the need to constantly check your phone, the endless scrolling, the fear of others' opinions, all of it starts to feel like noise in the face of something much bigger. When you remember that every breath could be your last, every moment becomes more vivid. The Stoics didn't encourage anxiety about death, they encouraged clarity about life. They knew that by contemplating the inevitability of death, one is forced to confront the question, am I living in accordance with what I value, or am I letting time slip through my fingers? This mindset turns procrastination into a form of insanity. Why delay your deepest work, your truest expression, or your most important relationships when you might not get another chance? Memento mori brings brutal honesty to the surface. It asks you directly, if you knew you'd die tonight, would you still spend your afternoon refreshing social media, avoiding difficult conversations, or numbing yourself with distraction? More often than not, the answer is no. That inner confrontation, painful as it may be, is exactly what the Stoics believed we need to reawaken our agency. There's a quiet intensity in those who remember death daily. They don't waste time on things that don't serve their purpose. They say no with more confidence. They show up more fully. They understand that life is not a rehearsal. It's a one-shot performance, and no one knows when the curtain will fall. Memento mori becomes a compass for choices. Should I take this job? Should I speak this truth? Should I create this project? When you filter these decisions through the lens of your mortality, what's important comes into sharp relief. The noise fades. The essentials rise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It's not a threat. It's a grounding force. When you internalize it, even the most common activities become sacred. A conversation with a loved one isn't just small talk. It could be your last chance to say something meaningful. A quiet morning alone isn't just empty time. It's a gift you won't always have. Death, far from being the end, becomes the ultimate motivator to live with intention, not passivity." The Stoics also believed memento mori humbles the ego. In a world where we chase recognition, control, and permanence, death reminds us we're all heading to the same end. No amount of likes, status, or wealth will matter in the grave. This isn't nihilism, it's freedom. When you stop chasing immortality and things that don't last, You begin to invest in what does virtue, presence, connection, and the impact you leave behind. You stop comparing and start contributing. You stop chasing distractions and start creating meaning. In practice, memento mori can be cultivated in small but powerful ways. You might keep a simple reminder in your workspace. A coin, a phrase on the wall, a journal prompt. You might begin your day with a moment of reflection. If today were my last, how would I live it? Or you might use it to reframe frustration. When someone cuts you off in traffic or a plan gets derailed, ask yourself, will this matter on my deathbed? Almost always, the answer is no. That realization returns your attention to what truly matters. There's also a paradox in this Stoic principle. By remembering death, you come alive. When you walk through your day aware that the hourglass is always draining, you stop sleepwalking. You become more generous, more curious, more focused. You love harder. You waste less. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin. Memento mori teaches that the perfect moment is now, because it might be all you get. To integrate this fully is to see time not as a renewable resource, but as a sacred, burning currency. Every moment spent in distraction is not neutral. It's lost forever. The Stoics didn't obsess over death because they were morbid. They meditated on it because they wanted to live. To focus like a Roman emperor is to remember that death walks beside you, and to let that presence sharpen your will, clarify your choices, and strip away anything that does not truly matter. Control the controllables is a foundational idea in Stoic philosophy, and perhaps one of the most liberating mental shifts a person can make. At its core, it is the practice of focusing only on what is within your power and releasing attachment to everything else. This concept, simple in theory but challenging in practice, was central to the Stoic mindset and essential to maintaining focus, resilience, and peace in an unpredictable world. The Stoics divided life into two categories: what is up to us and what is not. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all returned to this fundamental distinction again and again. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, your values, and your judgments are within your control. Everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, the economy, politics, outcomes, luck, even your body to a certain extent, is not. To a modern mind conditioned to strive, plan, and control every variable, this idea might feel uncomfortable or even defeatist at first. But the truth is, most of the anxiety and distraction people feel daily stems from trying to exert influence over things that cannot be tamed. The Stoic answer isn't to give up. It's to redirect that energy to what you can influence your own mind and behavior. Imagine a student stressed about an upcoming exam. She can't control what questions will appear, how hard they will be, or even how other students perform. But she can control how much she studies, how she manages her time, how she reacts to anxiety, and whether she chooses to complain or focus. If she obsesses over the things she can't influence, she becomes paralyzed and distracted. But if she locks in on what she can do, prepare intelligently, rest well, stay calm, she performs at her best, regardless of the outcome. This is what the Stoics meant by freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from the illusion that you must control everything around you. Marcus Aurelius ruled during wars, plagues, and political betrayal. If anyone had the right to feel overwhelmed, it was him. But instead, he wrote lines like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This wasn't wishful thinking. It was a deeply earned truth. By refusing to let his mind be dragged by circumstances he couldn't change, he could make clear-headed decisions in the midst of chaos. He couldn't stop the war, but he could lead with justice. He couldn't prevent betrayal, but he could remain honest. This mental discipline kept him grounded when the world wasn't. In today's world, distractions multiply because people believe they must monitor and react to everything. Every notification, headline, or opinion feels urgent, as if not responding means losing control. But in reality, the more you try to control the uncontrollable, the less control you actually have over yourself. Focus is fragmented, energy is wasted, mental clarity vanishes. The Stoic mindset pulls you back to center. It tells you, do your best with what is yours to command. Your attitude, your effort, your intention, and let the rest unfold however it will. This idea also applies to relationships. You can't make someone like you stay with you. agree with you, or understand you. But you can speak honestly, listen with attention, and show up with integrity. Trying to control others leads to frustration, manipulation, and disconnection. But owning your part and letting go of theirs builds real strength. It also applies to goals. You can't guarantee success, but you can commit to the process. You can show up every day, improve your skill, and take steps forward. If the result doesn't match your expectations, you don't collapse, because your effort wasn't wasted. You lived in alignment with your values, and that is never failure. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most respected Stoic teachers, said it bluntly: "There is only one way to happiness. Stop worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will." This is not a call to apathy. It's a call to focus. When you stop scattering your attention across things you can't change, you start making meaningful progress where it actually counts. You take back your mental sovereignty. To practice this principle, begin by catching yourself when you feel anxious or distracted. Pause and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it. If the answer is yes, then act. This single question can cut through hours of rumination and emotional noise. Over time, it becomes a filter for everything: media, conversations, goals, even your own thoughts. You learn to respond instead of react, to focus instead of flail, to move forward even in uncertainty. The world will never stop being chaotic. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. Circumstances will shift without warning. But within that storm, there is always one place where your power lives: inside your own mind. Control the controllables and let the rest be what it is. That is how the Stoics stayed calm under pressure, focused amidst distraction, and strong in the face of adversity. It's not about having control over life. It's about having control over yourself. And that, the Stoics knew, is more than enough. Voluntary discomfort is the deliberate choice to leave the realm of ease and step into situations that test body, mind, and ego before life does it for you. The Stoics realized that if you can learn to inhabit discomfort willingly, you convert something most people dread into an ally that sharpens focus and reveals hidden capacities. Marcus Aurelius took cold baths on military campaigns. Seneca practiced sleeping on a hard cot even though he could afford silk. Epictetus, once freed from slavery, kept meager possessions so comfort would never soften his resolve. They sought friction not because they were ascetics craving pain, but because they understood a powerful paradox. When you choose hardship on your own terms, involuntary hardships lose the power to destabilize you. Today, we are surrounded by conveniences designed to eradicate every trace of effort. Food arrives at the door within minutes, temperatures stay perfectly regulated, entertainment streams endlessly, and algorithms spare us boredom. Comfort becomes the default, and any deviation, a delayed train, a slow internet connection, a skipped snack, feels catastrophic. The Stoic antidote is to tip the balance consciously. When you fast for a day, lift weights that make your muscles shake, take a brisk walk in the rain without an umbrella, or power down your phone for a weekend, you reacquaint yourself with sensations modern life tries to erase. The first awareness is purely physical: hunger pangs, shivers, fatigue, restlessness. But just beneath the skin lies the deeper lesson about attention. Discomfort pulls you into the present moment like a magnet, stripping away idle chatter of the mind because the body's signals are immediate. You are not worrying about distant gossip while your lungs burn on the last sprint or while your stomach growls at 3 p.m. This harnessing of presence is the gateway to focus. Suppose you sit down to write an important proposal, but the chair is slightly hard, and you intentionally leave the room a bit cooler than usual. Those minor discomforts create a subtle urgency. You either do the work efficiently or prolong your exposure. Comfort, by contrast, can make attention slack. Wrapped in a heated blanket with snacks within arm's reach, the mind wanders towards small pleasures. Deadlines blur because nothing externally prods you. Voluntary discomfort flips the calculus. You become acutely aware of the cost of delay, and yet, because you chose the circumstances, you do not resent them. You signed the contract with discomfort. Now it serves you. Psychologists describe a concept called stress inoculation. Small, controlled doses of stress train the nervous system to handle larger threats without tipping into panic. Stoic voluntary discomfort operates on the same principle. By fasting, you teach the body that missing a meal is not an emergency. By exercising to genuine fatigue, you demonstrate that elevated heart rate and labored breathing are survivable. By taking cold showers, you prove that shock dissipates quickly when met with calm breathing. Each practice requires threat perception, shrinking the sphere of what triggers anxiety. As the threshold rises, everyday nuisances, traffic, critical feedback, fluctuating markets, no longer hijack your focus because they do not surpass the level of stress you willingly embraced at dawn in the freezing water. Another dimension is the calibration of desire. The Stoics warned that unexamined desire chains the mind to whatever it pursues. When comfort is abundant, desires multiply, gratification norms inflate. Voluntary discomfort resets the baseline. After 24 hours of fasting, plain rice tastes remarkable. After walking 10 kilometers in minimalist shoes, ordinary chairs feel luxurious. This reset exposes how much mental bandwidth was previously spent chasing incremental upgrades that added little to genuine well-being. Freed from that pursuit, attention returns to higher aims, craft, service, learning, because they now stand out as sources of lasting fulfillment rather than endless novelties. Critics sometimes argue that voluntarily seeking hardship while many people face unavoidable hardship is indulgent or performative. The Stoic answer is substance over optics. If a day without coffee makes you more patient with colleagues, if a cold shower every morning strengthens discipline that later fuels volunteer work, then the practice benefits both practitioner and community. The measure is transformation, not spectacle. Seneca recommended occasionally wearing rough clothing in public specifically to erode the fear of judgment. If people scoffed, so be it, another layer of distraction stripped away. To integrate voluntary discomfort sustainably, start small and consistent rather than heroic and sporadic. Choose one modest challenge that aligns with your life. Skip sweeteners for a week, bike instead of drive once a week. Turn the thermostat a few degrees lower during focused work blocks or schedule one digital-free evening. At first, you observe resistance the mind negotiates, invents excuses, predicts catastrophe. Recognize this as your training ground. Notice the stories that discomfort provokes. I can't think without caffeine. I'll freeze. I'll miss something important online. Meet them with curiosity rather than compliance. Each time you proceed anyway, you carve a neural groove of autonomy. I choose my response. Sensations do not dictate action. As weeks accumulate, unexpected dividends appear. Projects you postpone now move because procrastination looks silly after you have voluntarily endured heavier strain. Conversations you avoided happen because the emotional discomfort seems mild compared with yesterday's hill sprints. Sleep improves because the body, accustomed to occasional cold or hunger, no longer panics at minor temperature changes or growling stomach. Focus deepens because you have practiced sitting with urges rather than gratifying them instantly. The mind learns that craving is just another sensation passing through, not a command requiring obedience. Eventually, voluntary discomfort becomes more than isolated acts. It becomes a lens for evaluating opportunities. When a new challenge arises, public speaking, a career shift, a tough negotiation, you recognize the familiar tingle of discomfort and lean toward it rather than shrink. You remember the cold water, the empty stomach, the aching quads, and realize I've rehearsed this feeling. I know what to do. Breathe, step in, stay present. In that moment, distraction dies and life's arena expands. Thus, voluntary discomfort, properly understood, is not self-punishment but self-liberation. It is the deliberate cultivation of anti-fragility, the habit of placing oneself in controlled fires to burn away the excess and reveal the essential. It is the Stoic way of saying to the universe, I will not wait for chaos to test me, I will test myself first. And in doing so, focus becomes not a fragile mood but a forged trait, ready whenever difficulty arrives uninvited. Negative visualization, known in Stoic practice as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, is a powerful mental exercise used by Stoics to strengthen focus, reduce anxiety, and cultivate gratitude. At first, the concept may sound pessimistic, visualizing what could go wrong, imagining the loss of what you value, and contemplating worst-case scenarios. But its purpose is not to increase fear or negativity. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It brings a calm. grounded clarity that prepares the mind for difficulty while making you more present and appreciative in everyday life. The Stoics believed that expecting life to go smoothly was a recipe for disappointment and emotional fragility. Instead, they recommended mentally preparing for setbacks before they occur. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." By beginning the day this way, he wasn't dwelling on misfortune but inoculating his mind against it. When something goes wrong that you've already imagined, the shock is reduced, the emotional spike flattens, and you're able to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. This mental rehearsal sharpens your focus because it reduces the number of internal disruptions. When you haven't practiced negative visualization, every obstacle that comes your way feels personal or surprising. Traffic jams feel like personal offenses. A critical email derails your mood. A financial dip sparks panic. But when you've already imagined delays, criticism, and uncertainty, your mental bandwidth stays available for solving problems instead of spiraling emotionally. The energy that would have gone into frustration is instead directed toward adaptation and action. Focus for the Stoics was not about controlling every external variable. It was about creating a stable internal framework that could hold steady no matter what occurred outside. Negative visualization helps build this framework. When you take a moment each morning to envision the loss of something you value, a job, a relationship, your health, even your life, it might seem grim, but it grounds you. You realize how much you've been taking for granted. That daily cup of coffee becomes more than routine. It becomes a small moment of luxury. The annoying coworker becomes a reminder that you still have colleagues and purpose. The walk to work, once an inconvenience, becomes a privilege. Gratitude emerges not from denial of possible loss, but from staring it in the face and returning to the present with renewed appreciation. There's a counterintuitive serenity in acknowledging that life owes you nothing. When you expect everything to go right, you're easily thrown off. But when you've already mentally prepared for disruptions, you meet them with equanimity. Seneca advised, "Who robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, when you visualize loss or failure before it happens, you weaken its power over you. You don't deny reality, you disarm it. This isn't the same as pessimism or catastrophizing. The Stoic does not dwell in negativity. The purpose is not to assume the worst will happen, but to be prepared if it does. It's an act of psychological training. Just as an athlete trains in difficult conditions so they can perform when it counts, the Stoic trains the mind to remain stable in uncertainty. The practice increases your capacity to face whatever comes without being overwhelmed. In modern terms, negative visualization can be seen as a way of building mental resilience. Every time you visualize a setback, a cancelled project, a breakup, a missed opportunity, you also visualize your response. You practice keeping your dignity, adjusting your path, or even growing from the situation. This mental rehearsal builds confidence. You no longer fear the unknown because you've already walked its hallways in your mind. And in doing so, you free up your attention to stay focused on what really matters. You can apply negative visualization through simple daily habits. At the start of the day, before you reach for your phone or dive into work, close your eyes and picture one thing going wrong. Maybe a meeting gets cancelled. Maybe your internet goes down. Maybe someone criticizes your work. How will you respond? What virtues will you call on? Patience, discipline, humility. This short exercise sharpens your awareness of potential friction points while mentally rehearsing a calm, effective response. Another approach is to reflect in the evening. Look back on the day and ask what went well that I took for granted. What do I have now that could easily disappear tomorrow? This practice enhances both focus and presence. You begin to notice the fragility of daily blessings, and instead of living on autopilot, you engage more fully. You return to what you're doing with a deeper sense of urgency and intentionality. Perhaps the greatest gift of negative visualization is that it cuts through illusion. It reminds you that control is limited, but response is always available. It shows you the difference between what truly matters and what is simply noise. It strips away the fantasy of certainty and replaces it with mental readiness. And through that readiness, you gain something profound: the ability to stay steady, to stay focused, and to stay grateful in the face of anything. That is the heart of Stoic focus, not ignoring adversity, but walking toward it mentally prepared, fully present, and inwardly free. Is this essential? Is one of the simplest and most powerful questions in the Stoic toolkit, and Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, posed it often in his private reflections. In a world overflowing with distractions, obligations, and constant demands on our time and attention, this question cuts through the noise like a blade. It calls us back to clarity. It forces us to examine what we are doing, why we are doing it, and whether it truly serves our values and purpose. In an age where people pride themselves on being busy, the Stoic seeks to be deliberate. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, urged himself to strip things down to their essentials and discard what is not necessary. This wasn't about minimalism for aesthetic purposes. It was about sharpening his life so that he could lead better, think more clearly, and act with integrity. The question, is this essential? Works because it instantly brings into focus the quality of our attention. When you ask this before starting a task, replying to a message, agreeing to a meeting, or even entertaining a thought, it creates a moment of space to evaluate and choose consciously instead of reacting automatically. Most people never pause to ask this. Their day is filled with low-priority tasks masquerading as urgent, meetings that produce little value, constant checking of phones, and saying yes to things out of guilt or habit rather than purpose. The result is cognitive fatigue, emotional frustration, and an unshakable feeling of being off track. Focus becomes impossible, not because people lack discipline, but because they haven't clarified what truly matters. The Stoic response is not to do more. It is to do less, better. Asking, is this essential, invites you to practice a kind of mental decluttering. You start to see that a large percentage of your time is spent on things that do not move you closer to your goals or to a virtuous life. You begin to notice habits and activities that were inherited rather than chosen. You stop defaulting to the path of least resistance. This question acts like a gatekeeper to your attention. It doesn't just help you eliminate tasks, it helps you live with intention. When you apply this question consistently, a few transformations happen. First, your priorities become clearer. Instead of chasing everything, you begin to recognize the few things that actually contribute to your well-being, growth, and contribution. Second, your mind becomes quieter. When you no longer fill your time with clutter, you free up mental space. You begin to notice the quality of your thoughts, the rhythms of your day, and the energy behind your actions. Third, your confidence increases. When you live according to essentials, you know what you stand for. You act with alignment. You are not easily swayed by trends, temptations, or the approval of others, because you have already asked and answered the hard question. This Stoic practice is not just for work or productivity. It applies to relationships, goals, and even emotions. When someone insults you or when anxiety starts to rise, ask yourself, is this essential? Is it necessary to respond? Is this emotion helping me act with virtue? Often, you'll realize that what seemed urgent a moment ago is actually noise. The Stoics didn't deny emotion, but they refused to be ruled by unnecessary reactions. They chose their battles carefully and remained centered in what was within their control. Is this essential? Is also a counter to our culture of excess. We are conditioned to accumulate more stuff, more experiences, more likes, more opinions. But the Stoics aimed for eudaimonia, a flourishing life, not a busy one. To flourish, one must prune. Just like a tree grows stronger when excess branches are trimmed, your character strengthens when you cut away the non-essential. This doesn't mean living without pleasure or ambition. It means ensuring that pleasure and ambition do not become your master. This question also protects your time, the most finite resource you have. Seneca wrote that people are frugal with money, but wasteful with time. They guard their possessions, but give away their hours to trivial pursuits. By regularly asking, is this essential? You begin to treat time with the same care as any other valuable asset. You stop overcommitting. You say no more easily. You find joy not in being busy, but in being present. Ultimately, this question invites you into a higher standard of living. It challenges you not to live on autopilot. It reminds you that a good life isn't built through accumulation, but through intention. Every time you pause to ask it, you reclaim a piece of your attention. You bring yourself back to what matters. You choose what to keep and what to let go. And over time, this becomes not just a habit, but a way of being. A life lived with essentials is a life lived with depth. And the Stoics understood this well. They knew that if you want to be free, focused, and at peace, you don't need more, you need less, done better.